Okay, we've been talking so far in our new unit here, I'll move slightly more out of the way here. We've been talking in our new unit about the idea of anything that goes in either a periodic motion, meaning back and forth, or eventually we're going to talk about things that go in circles. But for right now, let's talk about anything that's going back and forth like a pendulum. And the thought experiment I want to kind of present is, say there's a kid on a swing, right? And the kid's going back and forth on a swing. They're basically just like a pendulum. If the kid just sits there and they swing back and forth, what's eventually going to happen? They're going to slow down and come to a stop, right? But me as a parent, I've got little kids that like to go on the swings. If I push them regularly in a nice repeated pattern, they can keep swinging for forever, right? As long as I give them a push at the right time, they keep going. Or my 6-year-old now knows how to swing by herself. And I got to say, as a parent, as soon as your kids know how to swing by themselves, like now you don't have to push them all the time. You can just say, go and swing, right? How do you swing again, right? At the right point, you got to like stick your legs out. And at the other point, you got to kick them underneath your butt and lean forward. You guys remember how to swing from when you were little? Right? And that's what I want to talk about right here is that if you want to go higher, the word you need to know or the phrase we need to discuss is in sync. Not the boy band, but in sync. Wasn't that joke? Here's another phrase we use, in phase. When things are working in phase, it helps and it makes it bigger. The word we're going to use is amplified. And I've got a picture here that'll hopefully help explain it. See how right here I've got a wave that's going up and down, up and down, up and down in blue? And then there's a second wave that's in black, and it's going up and down, up and down. And for a brief moment in time, I would say that they are in phase. Can you guys see this location right here? How they are in phase? And what ends up happening is that the frequency and the period from here to here exactly matched each other. And what ends up happening is wave 1 and wave 2 became amplified, and they became wave 3, and they became bigger. That's what happens in a similar way when the kid is on the swing. Okay. The vocabulary that we use is resonant frequency and forced frequency. A resonant frequency is a nice natural frequency, like the thing going back and forth, right? But if I push Kinsey on the swing at the right time, I'm now applying a forced frequency. And if the frequencies match each other perfectly, well, then she goes higher and higher and higher. Does that make sense? But let's say I push at the wrong time, right? So imagine, just watch my hands here. Imagine someone's going back and forth, back and forth. If I always push right here, like this, now my regular frequency, my, resonant frequency, is being matched by my forced frequency. But let's say I push at the wrong time. Let's say I try to push here, and then I try to push there, and then I try to push here. Do you see how it would be all over the place? That's what this bottom graph shows, is that they are not in phase, they're not in sync, except for that one time. If you can make these things be exactly in sync with each other, amplification happens and your waves get bigger. Right? And the wave in this example here is the kid in the swing who basically is going to go back and forth further, higher, right? But you have to push at the right time. If you push at the wrong time, they're not in phase. Okay. Now, one of the common examples that we use for this is musical instruments. Right? All musical instruments are basically emitting a sound wave. And they may be emitting it very softly or loudly, but really that wave is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, being amplified. Right? For example, this string right here on the guitar, if you give it just a little pluck, it makes a small sound, right? But if it's able to vibrate back and forth even more, and it's in sync, then you get nice, loud music. I mean, really, this French horn, all instrumentation runs on the same principle. And I'd like to explain the opera singer shattering the glass. You guys ever put water in a glass? You lick your finger and you run it around the edge of it and you hear the sound of it? That would be, went too far. The glass itself would have a resonant frequency. Okay. All matter is vibrating. Did you guys know that from previous science classes? All matter is vibrating. Heat, right? Everything is actually vibrating just a little bit back and forth. Well, that glass that you have with water in it, it's vibrating a little bit, but not really a lot. But what happens when you take your finger and you run it around the top of the glass? You're now adding a forced frequency, and it's matching the frequency of the cup, and it's making the sound, it's making those waves amplified to the point where you can hear them. Well, if an opera singer manages to shatter this glass, it's because they were singing so loud and with the matched frequency that the frequency of the glass just sitting there and the frequency of the opera singer singing, it matched to the point where it got it to shake so much that eventually it breaks. You've probably heard of that before, but like, let me show you a different demo for this, and you're going to have to come closer because you won't be able to hear it that well. The boxes that I have here are very small compared to what I had when I worked at Walsh. So can you guys come mobile, come join me around here, and I want to show you a little demo here. It kind of shows the same principle. The principle is called resonance. Okay. Now, since I'm talking about musical instruments, these right here are just basic tuning forks. And when I hit them, they vibrate at a certain frequency, and you can hear a certain pitch. The pitch on this, by the way, is 440 hertz. So if I hit that with the pencil, that's the sound. Broke something. If I hit it with the pen, same pitch. If I hit it with this pen or with this mallet, it's not changing its sound based on what I'm hitting it with. Does that make sense? Because what's happening is this thing has a natural frequency. It normally wants to vibrate at 440 hertz. And when I hit it, it's causing it to vibrate more, and it's amplifying the waves, and now we can hear them better. Now here's what's really cool. This is faint, so you're going to have to like take turns and listen carefully. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put these two boxes almost next to each other, and I'm going to hit this pin right here. And it's now going to be vibrating with the frequency, and we're all going to hear that sound. But some of that frequency is going to go inside this box, become a little bit amplified, and it's going to cause this tuning fork to start vibrating as well. Because both of these tuning forks are both 440 hertz. And so therefore, they're in sync with each other. They're in phase with each other. So let's try this, see if this works. I'm going to hit this one here. Okay. Now I'm going to dampen this one. Can you hear that still from where you're at? All right, try it again. Put your ears closer if you need to. I'm going to hit this one here. Can you hear that one still ringing? And now it's done. So here's what happened. This is just like me pushing my daughter on the swing. This thing right here is Kinsey on the swing on her own. And it's vibrating. But is it vibrating enough that you can hear anything? No. I got to do this to be able to hear it. And it doesn't matter how much, just a little bit will do. Anything like that will get it to start vibrating more in sync, right? But the waves from this one right here basically are going to be in sync with the frequency of this one right here. So hitting this one causes this one to start vibrating. And that's known as resonance. Okay? You can actually even do this if you'd like to try this later by yourself. Just take the two tuning forks, hit the one of them, bring it close to the other one, and then hear that one in your ear. And you can actually hear this one vibrate. So here, try this. Can you hear that? Try it yourself, because I only have two of them. Okay. Now, one more thing I want to point out, though. What if I use two different tuning forks? You might say, Chris, this works for everything, right? Well, these are different tuning forks. This one right here is set to vibrate at 512 hertz, which, by the way, is C, for those of you who know music. And this one right here is 440. I want to think it's C and G, but I forget. So these have a different frequency, right? If I were to do the exact same experiment here and hit that one, then move it away, that one's not vibrating, right? But again, if I do the same one and I match their frequencies, yeah, that didn't work very well. Let's try it again here. Can you still hear that faintly? If not, come closer, try it again later, but hopefully you can hear it. Okay. That's actually more or less it for my lesson. That whole principle is known as resonance. And there's a really famous example of a bridge that actually was destroyed due to resonance. This is called the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And what ends up happening is this really long bridge, it had a natural frequency, just like this has a natural frequency, just like this has a natural frequency. And a small amount of wind apparently came and started hitting the bridge, but the wind was exactly in phase. And so do you see this picture I have back here where this was not exactly in phase except for one small section here? So this wasn't in phase, this wasn't in phase, but apparently the wind that came and hit it was exactly in phase with its natural frequency. And this bridge started to vibrate a little bit, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And here's an animation of it. This is crazy. This is what started to happen to this bridge. it basically started to vibrate back and forth and back and forth. And it wasn't a big gust of wind. We live in southern Alberta and we think, oh, it was just a big windstorm. No, it wasn't how much wind there was. It had to match the frequency perfectly. And if it's in phase, it gets louder and louder, which is why these two can connect to each other, but this one here doesn't. So, does that make sense? This is so cool. I can't believe that a bridge was actually bending that much. The destruction on it is just catastrophic. Like this bridge just tore itself apart. So. Anyways, that's it. That's my lesson. Like 10 minutes here. Does anyone have any questions on resonance? Okay, let me just give a quick summary then. Basically, the idea is waves can become stronger if you push them at the right time, right? If Kinsey's going back and forth on the swing and I push her at the right moment every time, she gets pushed even further, right? They have to be in phase. That's these two right here. If they're not in phase, there's no point in doing it, right? But you can actually cause a resonant frequency to occur. So, sound good? Cool. Okay, go take your seats. I'll stop the video. It's a pretty short lesson, isn't it? 11 minutes.